Thanks for joining us. We're going to be having a live streaming chat with Mike Daikubara. Mike is an industrial designer and a graphic designer from Charlotte, North Carolina, and he's also an urban sketching instructor. And Mike's going to talk about how he got started with urban sketching and about his sketching journey. And so welcome, Mike.
Well, thank you, Brenda. Yeah, can everyone hear me? Can you hear me, Brenda?
I can hear you.
Through.
No one
All
else
right, excellent.
to be able to respond. So.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing about what we're doing here, but it's totally understandable. For those of you that aren't aware, we've been having some issues with the security problems during the call, so that's why we had to turn everyone's video and commenting off, which is very, very sad because I would have loved to see all your faces and have a little conversation coming through.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll try to make it. Yeah.
Just so that everyone knows, this is meant to be an interactive chat, and we would like to interact with you as much as we can, but we've had to turn off, as Mike said, the audio and video because of Zoom bombers. And so if you have a question for Mike, please message me on Facebook Messenger. Find my profile, my personal profile, not the Studio 56 profile. Find the Brenda Murray profile, and then just Facebook message me your question for Mike, and I will be asking those questions as we go along.
Okay, great.
So, Mike,
so for today,
a little bit about sketching, your journey of sketching, and
my
so
God,
on.
sketching.
Yeah, did you draw as a child?
So I could go on forever about this topic, and but yeah, regarding sketching as a child, I never drew as a child. So that's something very different. With a lot of people I met, I almost hated drawing as a child, I think, if I remember correctly, and it might have to do with the fact that I just couldn't draw. I just couldn't draw, and they say every child could draw, but I just remember not being able to draw, and I hated that. And I grew up my entire life, and but in college, I went to an industrial design school. And the reason why I got so interested in industrial design was it was the profession on making things for other people in 3-dimension mostly. It was things that were physical. So industrial designers get to design things that are mass produced that we use daily, like around your house. The kitchen appliances or the faucet or your iPhone or your computer. Everything is designed by a designer, and it just fascinated me. So I got into design, and after graduation, I was fortunate enough to get a job in the industrial design field. And quickly, I realized that I was trained to be able to design, analytical thinking, the more the engineering side, making things in 3D and with your hands. But I wasn't very good at communicating via drawing. Quickly, especially. So I realized I was able to draw, if I took the time, but I just couldn't communicate quickly. And that's the reason why I started sketching. And sketching was the way of me of training to be able to draw faster and communicate more than coming up with something that is beautiful or was more for fulfilling your art kind of creation purposes. It really wasn't any of that. It was I wanted to be able to draw fast. Okay. So yeah, that's how I got started. And
you're pretty fast now.
Yes, I've gotten to be very fast at drawing, and that has to do with a lot of things too. It was, and I like to take you through the journey a little bit about rather than just me talking about it. It's always nice to see. I'm a visual person, as well as I'm sure everybody on the call here is a visual person too. So this is a sketchbook from 20 years ago. So in a sense, I almost don't want to share it because I look at it going like, it's like, but it's a journey. We all go through it. I want to share with you that I started drawing, like late in my 20s, early 30s, and that's really when I got started. So you don't have to start out drawing, as a child. So in my early days of drawing, I did a lot of line drawing, and this was line drawings done a lot in coffee shops, especially. So I used to go to coffee shops and draw things that were in the coffee shop, mostly things that were static. And people were actually pretty nice to draw too, because in coffee shops they tend to not move as much. So it was a good practice in getting people drawing done, as well as places where people didn't move very much. This is a local DMV. As you know, in DMVs in the US, you get online and you're there for a very long time. And there are people all over the place,
Mike,
you know,
you'll
and
have to explain
yes,
to us non-Americans, what's the
sure.
DMV?
DMV is a fascinating place. It's a Department of Motor Vehicle. It's where you go get your driver's license,
Oh, okay, right.
and yeah, it's. I mean it in a very unusual way. In that, yeah, it's you know, it's just the people there are just fascinating to draw, and not that you should go to the DMV just to draw people, but it's so. And a lot of things I have here are anything that I could get my eyes on. And if I had the sketchbook, which I carried with me all the time, I drew it. And
Wow.
so that that was kind of my, you know, early, you know, when I got started, I didn't know what kind of pen to use. I didn't know what sketchbook to use. I just, you know, was able to find things and just make use of it. And Brenda, there was a screen I shared with you for the tools, which might be a good one just to pop up. Um,
Okay.
and that, yeah, if you could see it.
Can you see
Yeah,
that?
so what I just showed right now, this is a screen capture from one of my early books that I published. It's no longer being published right now, but I thought it'd be a good one to show. I showed a few sketches, and it was just a little bit of the journey of how I got started and some of the pens I used. Um, if you go to the next one, Brenda, which is what I'm about to talk about next, then I'll flip over to some examples. So in the next part of the journey, I started realizing line drawing was, you know, it was getting to a point where like I wanted to see some more, and I wanted to start playing with color. But color was I didn't know how to get started, and I was also scared of color. I didn't know how to mix colors. I didn't know where to start. But then I found out that there's a way of doing things with sepia color, just one color and one brush pen. And so that's how I got started. Brenda, if you could switch back to my screen, I'll show an example of um, what I have. So this is a sketchbook I started carrying. It's a very small sketchbook. It's a postcard size. And this worked great for me in getting started and in line wash drawings. Um, I mean, this was, you know, at the time, this was the most I could do. And it was great because it wasn't intimidating as the larger sketchbook size ones, where once again, these are from coffee shops. So it's not like I'm looking for something to draw. I'm actually sitting down and drawing whatever's in front of me. That's always kind of been an approach. It still is now. I rarely go around looking for things to draw. I mean, unless I really, really want to draw. But you know, if I, you know, to get my sketching needs out of the way of fulfillment, I would go to a place. Here I offer, you know, it's typically ordering the food and the drinks, and they're in front of me. I would start out drawing the food, then everything behind it, and then end up with putting wash colors behind. So that is my journey of, you know, one color wash, which then I realized I wanted to start adding color. So Brenda, there's a screen I shared for the color one. And then if you could switch back to me after that. So that's when I moved on to the watercolor. I found the small kit called the Sakura Koi, which they still make now. And I still use the outer case. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But these were the tools I used. I carried a micron pen, a water brush, and a Sakura Koi color. So those were the only things I carried, and I carried a sketchbook called the Cachet sketchbook. Interesting story about that one too is that, you know, so this Cachet sketchbook, it's so now looking back at it, it's not the best quality paper. It really isn't. And but I enjoyed it a lot because it forced you to draw in a way that if you added a lot of water to it, it would buckle so much it wouldn't take it. And then I realized if I was putting too much water or spending too much time on it, it was taking me too long. So it was just a good way of speeding up the drawing. So let me show you some examples from that book.
I think you're like all of us, Mike, where
Hmm.
you have to make a lot of mistakes before you start to really
Yep,
figure out what works for you and with your
that's correct.
style and so on. So
Yeah.
what
Hmm.
maybe I'll just skip ahead and ask you, what kind of
Okay, sure.
paper are you using now?
Oh, what kind of paper? So these were some examples of the color ones. So you kind of get that they're very light washes,
Yeah.
and so interesting story. So there was a person that used to work here that designed this sketchbook that actually went on to design a book that I think many of us know called Stillman and Bird.
Oh, okay.
So Michael actually worked there, and he started this company, Stillman and Byrne. And this is my go-to sketchbook. I use a series called the Alpha series, and also the Beta series. And I right now I can't live without them. These are I've tried other sketchbooks in between, but for me, there's nothing that compares to this brand.
And can you tell
And
me is that hot press or cold press?
so those technical stuff.
So is it the bumpy
Sorry.
paper or the really smooth paper?
Oh, okay. Oh, good. Yeah, that's more like it. One is a little bit smoother, but it has a little bit of texture. It's the Alpha series, and the Beta series has a little bit more. It's a lot more thicker,
Okay.
and it takes a lot more. It takes a lot more wash. So
Okay. The alpha
that's what
and
I'm using
beta.
now. Alpha and Beta. Yeah, those are my go-to
Okay.
sketches.
Cool.
Yeah. Actually, let me jump back a little bit because this has been a turning point, I think, in my sketching career. So everything I showed you up until now, I think I was drawing for about 10 years,
Wow.
and it was in sole like isolation. It was by myself. I did not share it with anybody except my wife. I wasn't on any social media. I wasn't on Flickr. I wasn't on Facebook. I actually didn't understand what it meant to share online. I just didn't. It wasn't that I didn't understand like the usage of it. It's just I just didn't do it. And then um, I can't even remember how I found out about Urban Sketchers Symposium. The very first one in Portland, Oregon in 2010. I found out about it a week before the conference, and I had a few days of vacation time. So I took it, I went to Portland, and it pretty much changed my life, as with many people that have attended
Yeah.
the symposium. Let me show you some of the sketches from the symposium. I mean, so I'm in Portland. First time in Portland, beautiful place, and I just love that place. And some sketches these aren't very good sketches. They're from 10 years ago, but these are it brings me great joy. It was first time I met lapon. I met Gabby. um, so it's like and Veronica was there presenting. It's just unbelievable, and they're presenting and I'm taking notes about what they're doing. I took like Veronica's class where we went to a nearby park and drew people. What else? So we could talk about some of these things later on too. But
Yes.
I
Ask you
have
about
drawn, yeah, about hotel rooms. I draw hotel rooms. I stopped recently, but I have drawn about 170 hotel rooms. Um, Here's a class from Frank Ching. For those of you that know, Frank is just an amazing architect.
is that
A lot of names you probably realize. Yeah, here's Tia Boone,
yeah.
amazing person. So it's just like it is really a life changing situation. Where here's a sketch from Gabby's class where we went outside and drew based on his kind of suggestions on approaches of things. So what's really changed about Urban Sketchers is that for the first time I met in my life people that shared kind of the same passion, the same appreciation, and it was okay to be with people and not have to like like socialize, or you could actually meet people for the first time and just like sit there for a long time, just sketching together, just saying a few words here and there, and everyone's feeling comfortable. It's like, as opposed to going to a party you don't know and trying to figure out like who to mingle with. It's like none of that.
No.
It's just beautiful, where it's okay to be yourself, and
Yeah.
have your own sketchbook. It's okay to not even look at that person, because everyone understands you're drawing something, and we all know we could talk and draw at the same time, kind of thing.
Mike, can I ask you a question here?
Yes.
I've got some people who are texting me. You want to put your
Oh,
camera?
yes.
There we go. Because we want to catch that hat. Because you're.
Okay. Yes.
I love your hat.
Yes. Hey, well, thank you.
I know
I love hats.
You really. You can wear a hat too. It looks really cool.
Thank you very much. It's I have to mention today. I appreciate today. I think it's the first time in 3 weeks since I've actually like fully dressed up, because I'm just inside working. I'm wearing whatever I can, and
unshowered. Your beard is.
Well, Well, I take a shower when my hair is like this. It's like, so it's nice too. It's nice to dress up a little.
You look good. You look really handsome.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so Janice is asking, is Stillman and Byrne the correct name of the sketchbook? Yes, right?
That's correct. Stillman and Byrne.
Stillman, and Byrne is Birn. And I think
that's correct.
Purchased on Amazon.
They could be purchased on Amazon, absolutely. They have their own website. They have numerous series out there. But Alpha is one of the first ones that came out. Beta, I believe, is the second kind of series that came out, and they have a whole lot of. So you pretty much could find what you're looking for.
Yeah, and we have a question from Rohit, and Rohit is asking, Mike started with a small sketchbook and then moved on to a big format. Is there an advantage sketching in a big sketchbook, A4 or bigger, over small size sketchbooks like pocket size?
Oh, good. Very good question. So in the beginning, I started out actually a lot bigger, 8.5 by 11. This is when I got started in the journey. These were, in America, these are pretty standard size sketchbooks. So you could find them everywhere. Then I moved on to something smaller just because I wanted, these were awesome, where I could just put it in my pocket. I actually had it in my pocket all the time. I believe at the time I lived in Milwaukee, which tends to be really very, very cold. So I had a lot of pockets, and I had pens and sketchbooks everywhere. Then I moved on to more of the landscape. It was a little bit smaller than the 8.5 by 11, but landscape for me worked better than like a portrait size. So I stuck with that. I still do continue to do that, but I think it gets to a point where you just have to find what you like, and actually let me jump in there. So I almost went again to using some other sizes too. I have a whole bunch of different sizes too, and it was really my wife that jumped in and said, Mike, it's like, why don't you just stick to one size? She's like, she didn't think it would look good on the bookshelf when there were like sketchbooks of all these sizes, and I'm like, come on, but I have all these sizes. It's like you go to the symposium, you get a sketchbook, you want to try it. But one thing I learned is that when you try something, I recommend trying it until the very end. So, I mean, when you have one sketchbook, you try one page, you try something else, you try one page, you just really never learn what's good about it and what's bad about it, like to the full extent. So, whatever it is, I recommend trying, even if it's bad, try it till the end to see like, why is it so bad?
Yeah.
So I don't know if I answered the question, but long story short is you get to a size that's comfortable, that in your daily usage. Another part is that for me, when I sketch, I typically sketch standing. So 8.5 by this 7 by 10, 10 by 7 is pretty much the size I could withstand like this, in this posture, and draw for an hour and a half without my hand like falling apart, kind of thing.
Okay, so you're not a stool guy.
I am a stool guy. Actually, let me show you. Give me 1 second. I have my backpack here, but I think I have the smallest stool that you could ever find. It's about yay size. It's
Wow.
actually about this. It's about the size of a water bottle, and
Wow.
I've actually taken this into places with even very high security, like the Statue of Liberty, where they won't let you in with anything. But I put this in my back pocket, and I went in with it. But this, yeah, so this actually is a collapsible stool. Let me show you the size of it. It's about yay big. So it's not for everyone, but it's, wow, I could actually sit here, I could sit on this for 2 hours and be comfortable.
So your
And
knees are
it,
going to be up around your ears, though.
so yeah, seriously, right? So for very, very tall people, absolutely. Some of the advantages of being small is I could use something like this. So once again, it's not for everyone, but it beats sitting on the cold floor. It
Yeah.
really does.
Yeah.
Especially nowadays on the floor, you never know what's on the floor, and it's nice to just be off of it, especially in cities and stuff. It's
Yeah.
so I am a stool guy too, but typically I like standing, just for safety and flexibility, and you never know what happens in certain situations. You just have to be ready to, move when necessary. So.
So I've got a few questions more, but maybe I'll just pause on the questions and you can continue on. Can you tell us a little bit more about your sketching history?
Sure. So we talked about urban sketchers, how that's really changed everything. But a lot of things that's changed for me is that ability to sketch in many places without being super conscious of yourself. I think that's one of the hurdles that's hard for many people,
Yeah.
including myself, which took 10 years, I believe, because it really was. Is that in coffee shops, I would find like the back end corner with a wall in the back, so no one's looking at what I'm doing, or or going to an area where people aren't seeing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you don't always get the best view of what you want to sketch, and you're always conscious of what other people are thinking of you. Urban Sketchers Symposium really changed that. There are a couple of people there from just the initial attendance. It just blew me away. People like Lapon. I remember seeing Lapon for the first time, and we were on a train with a whole bunch of other people. I mean, the train is jam packed, right? And Lapon pulls out a sketchbook, and there's like a person in front of him. He just like starts sketching, like some person like he doesn't know. It's like wow, it's like, how do you do that? It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
and there's so many other people too at that conference. It just like completely blew me away.
I
And
had
not that
the
you should
same
just go, yeah,
I had the
yeah,
same experience. I remember
okay,
just
yeah.
going to my first Urban Sketcher Symposium, and I think I met you at my first Urban Sketcher Symposium. Was in
Hmm, hmm,
Barcelona.
hmm.
Yeah, I remember meeting
Yeah,
you
yeah,
at the
yeah,
first
yeah.
symposium in Barcelona in a market somewhere, and you started talking to me. I was like, "Wow, this is a really cool guy."
Well, thanks. That's great to know. But
Yeah,
yeah, so I think getting over that self-consciousness was good. Not that you want to go up to strangers and start drawing them. You always want to understand their privacy and their comfort level.
yeah,
But also, one thing is that when you're sketching, most people that see you are fascinated with what you're doing. That's what I think we should all know. I mean, they're just like sincerely, fascinated. So you shouldn't be cautious of, like conscious of like, ooh, what do they think of my sketch? It's like none of that. It's like, ooh, what are they doing? And they just want to see you,
yeah,
kind of thing. And that's why I also recommend, and this isn't for everyone, but I don't recommend wearing headsets or listening to music while you're sketching outside. It's like people want to come talk to you. Let them talk to you. You learn so much from people that are fascinated with what you're doing.
and I think sometimes
Also,
what you're listening
mhm.
to, if there's a bird or there's a train or there's people talking, sometimes that overheard conversation is really fun to work it into the sketch. It's part of
Absolutely.
the whole experience, right?
Absolutely. It's absolutely the entire experience. It's many of us that sketch, we might throw in conversations that we overheard, which is sometimes fun. And it also tells the story of what you're doing too. But it's so there's all of that as well as safety too. You want to be conscious of, what what's happening in your environment, whether it be cars or, people, or, sometimes, you might not be in the safest spot and you might not even know it. But when you're hearing things, you tend to be more sensitive of what's happening. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So
yes.
let's
Yeah.
continue
Okay.
on.
Yeah, all righty. So I'd like to move on to another turning point in my sketching career, which was a trip to Egypt. And so the trip to Egypt was really fascinating, just because I've never been to a country so different from anything I had known, growing up. So I grew up in Japan and in New York City. So I grew up in two major cities, and Japan and the US is different to begin with in its own way, but Egypt, it was was nothing like it compared to what I knew.
Yeah.
And so it was also the first time my wife and I went on a trip where it was a one of those package trips where they plan out every day for you.
Yeah.
We are not big fans of that. We like to plan our journey, but also it was the first time going there. We knew nothing about it, so we're like, let's give it a try. So we went there, and what's really changed is how I started sketching there. It had to do with it was right before my birthday. So she actually purchased a gift for me without me knowing. And this is my first Fude pen, made by a company called Sailor. That's a Japanese company that makes fountain pens. And a Fude pen, Fude in Japanese, it means a brush. And what it is that it might be hard to see, but there's the nib of it is bent up, and it looks broken at first. But what it is depending on how you draw and the angle you draw it at, you get a really, really thin line to a very, very thick line. And it's hard to control at first, but I drew the entire trip with this one pen.
Wow.
And that was the first time for me where, I wasn't sure, how to draw things, but the Fude pen, it actually made it so I could actually draw really, really fast.
Can you bring it a little bit closer, Mike?
Sure. Let's see if that helps.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So, and I never knew what kind of situation I was going to have. Like with the pyramid, there's a time where we couldn't even get near the pyramid because they had limitations on how many buses could go through. Or like the Sphinx, people are familiar with the front side of the Sphinx, but jam-packed with people taking cameras. But when you go to the rear end, which no one, I guess, wants to see, it's like nobody. So it's like the perfect angle to draw. But, and you could always tell stories about things like that.
Like the Sphinx has no tail.
The Sphinx, Sphinx has no tail.
Hey.
And and it's actually a fascinating view because I'm sure, many of you haven't seen the rear end of a Sphinx. And, and it was the first time for me too. And there are times, I'm on the horse carriage and, it's about 10 minutes, it's shaking and, I'm just drawing. And, this is, I'm sure people that have traveled to other parts of the world can share this experience, but I was drawing this carriage and these kids that were selling things to tourists, I mean, they were just completely fascinated, came on over and wanted to see me draw, started talking to me, and it's great. It's like such a way of of getting to know people, and it just connects people regardless of the language or the culture or like that. So
when you're drawing the scene, you will never
yes,
forget that scene.
that's correct. Yeah, it just like lives on you. So I don't know if you could see some of the sketchbooks I have on the backside there, but those were the sketchbooks over the years. And this opportunity today to talk about this is great because I pulled them out. I have them stacked. These are in milk crates. They're organized and all, but I rarely look at them. And it was just a nice opportunity to, go back and pull out some and relive some of the moments, especially now that we can't really go outside. It's just nice to, relive some of the things that happen in the outside world kind of thing. So,
Mike, I'll ask you another question here from Cindy Legrand.
Yes. Okay.
And Cindy says, you seem to be very prolific, even traveling on business. I'm missing the Charlotte Urban Sketchers since we moved to Montana.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so shout out to Charlotte Urban Sketchers. And there isn't a group within several hours of me. Do you have any suggestions for staying motivated to continue doing urban sketching?
Oh, nowadays that's a huge challenge. And I think it really does depend on where you live too. Um, I mean, for me, I think I've been fortunate to actually live in Charlotte, where compared to people that live in major cities, for instance, I lived in New York, I lived in Boston or in San Francisco, and I have friends there that just can't go outside because their major form of transportation is either walking or the public transportation, and there's people everywhere. Here in Charlotte, it's mostly by car. I live in a house where I could just go downstairs, hop in a car, go outside. So at least I get to see outside. So it's not available to everyone, but it's nice being able to just drive outside of the house. Where let me see, I have a sketch from let's see, some recent sketches is hold on.
She's probably
Oh
talking
yeah.
about not
Hmm.
having an Urban Sketches chapter near her. And I would say probably most chapters are loose enough that even if you're from out of town, they will allow you to become members of that chapter.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you can join
Abs-
my chapter, Cindy, if you want, in Urban Sketches Waterloo Region.
Abs-
Yeah, and you can
Absolutely.
post your
Yeah.
sketches there.
Yep.
And if you get in touch with other artists in your area, you could even start your own chapter if there isn't another chapter nearby. So yeah,
Yeah. Starting a chapter is one way of doing it too. Absolutely.
yeah,
But yeah, to be self motivated too is another thing
yeah.
that's
Do
hard. But
you want to show us some recent sketches?
sure. Recent sketches. You could probably pull up the slideshow. That might be better. Um, and
Yep.
I could talk about some of them.
Did we finish with this? You didn't show this.
Oh well, yeah. Well, we could skip this. This is a very small phase, and yeah. So some of these are, you know, they're almost comical in a way. But this is, of course, the before we had to stay at home. This is, a month and a half ago or so. It feels like ages ago, but
Yeah, last year.
there's a yeah, right. Seriously, as crazy as it sounds, there's this cafe that sells this ice cream with this cotton candy thing on the outside. And they called it Miss Kitty. I wanted to go draw it. I went once by myself. I was too ashamed or embarrassed to order it myself, so I took my wife with me the next time and ordered it and sketched
Oh,
it.
you made her do the embarrassing thing.
Yes, yes. Usually, yeah, I use her a lot for stuff like
Okay,
that.
somebody has to hold the ice cream. You're busy holding your
Yeah,
sketchbook, right?
yeah. So she's holding. Yeah, you can flip to the next one. So these are really, really quick sketches. Waffle House is, if you're from the South here, I mean, this place is amazing. They have 24 hours breakfast, and it's just unbelievable. And it's just nice to capture like a brunch. And I
Yeah,
had steak and eggs,
yeah.
like the way my father would have had breakfast in the 70s. And you know, once okay. Um, Viva Chicken. So this is, so you might see food a lot from me, and it's not like I go out to like say, hey, I'm just gonna draw food. No, it's not that. It's like I need to draw to get my fulfillment of drawing, but the time to eat might be the only time I get to draw.
Right.
So I mean that's why you see a lot of these. So you could keep on flipping through. And the Viva Chicken one, it was pretty nice because I posted that they contacted me and they commissioned me to do some more artwork. So like these are commissioned artworks
Oh,
that
wow.
were, yeah, a little bit different than how I would sketch. I had to do research in some of these. Like I had to look at what a basil or rosemary looked like and
Right.
do illustrations. Yeah. And so like a botanical garden, some of these hidden gems in Charlotte. Charlotte has a lot of places to draw, but it's a city. It's a strange place, though. It's a beautiful place and strange in that I don't think it's a city that's very good at promoting itself or hasn't really found a way to uh, get get the attention that other cities tend to get.
Right.
But there's a lot here, and I like to start capturing more of that and sharing it.
Somebody is asking, do you paint on both sides, paint or draw on both sides of the paper in the Stillman Byrne Alpha Series books?
Oh, Alpha series. Oh, Alpha series and Beta series, both sides. Both sides, yes. Yeah. And Alpha series, that's a good question because the Alpha series, it tends to buckle a little more than the Beta series, but it's once again, it's how much you go into it, and it forces me to draw faster and less water for watercolor. If you're using a lot of water, it's not going to take it. So.
And someone else is asking, do you have any suggestions for loosening up instead of getting caught up in the details?
Okay, that's a really good one. So, and I think it might tie in more into my sketching journey and how I ended up writing a book on the drawing called Sketch Now, Think Later. It's really about a lot of things, but the speed of drawing is a huge one. It has to do with a number of things. One for me is that I tend to travel with my wife a lot. She's a non-sketcher, and I can't keep her waiting, or I don't want to keep her waiting too. And so I learned to be able to slip in sketches during the times that are a little more manageable, and also understand what you could do on the spot and what you can't. So at minimal, I do a line sketch all the way through. And especially with food, I rarely, or I don't as much watercolor on the spot because I like to eat my food while they're warm. So I would do that later on.
Yeah.
And when you urban sketch though, it's like having a time limitation. It's actually a positive thing for me, at least. It makes you focused. You only have that 20 minutes. If you miss it, you're never going to get the chance to do it, especially when you travel to the other side of the world to sketch. You're not going to have an opportunity to just walk around looking for the perfect angle, the perfect, there's no such thing as perfect. It's like, it's what you make out of it. So,
yeah, I think
it's a mindset.
I think you answered someone else's question. They asked, line work always before watercolors.
Well, so there is there's a backside to that too. So yes, line art always before watercolor, and situations where I know something is going to happen, or I might know something is going to happen, or it's more time constraint, or it's so. For instance, Brenda, if you switch to some of the 4 sketches I sent you recently, you could just keep on flipping through some of those. Let's start around here. So these sketches are recent examples, actually. This is a park that's nearby, sketch from about 2 weeks ago or so. And they recently closed this park for many reasons, but there weren't that many people at the site here. But these sketches that I'm about to show you here are done with watercolor first. Then ink later. And so I call it wash now, ink later. Or actually someone called it, I'm like, hey, that's an ancient way to remember. So what it is about it is, for the people that do watercolor would know this, is that when you put watercolor down, especially washes, like, lots of water, it takes time to dry. And so, the time you're waiting for it to dry, lots could happen. Like if you're doing this in a, if I'm trying to do this at a Waffle House, drawing pancakes, or, if I'm somewhere in the middle of the street drawing a car that might drive away. So, like with this scenario, I know it's safe. I could sit there. I know there's nobody near in sight that aren't going to come near me, for, keeping the social distance. And I know that it's, my wife was near me, but, she was, preoccupied with something else. And, I knew I had the time to do it. So in those cases, I do watercolor first in situations. If you flip through some of the other ones, I could go through some other examples.
How about this one?
Yeah, so this is a watercolor first too. This drawing in this park where there's nobody in sight, and I had a little bit of time here, so I was able to. So these are more, on the more kind of the colorful ones. So I switch back and forth between those. This is ink first. So because food tends to be line art first.
It's funny with your sketches, I can not really tell which are line first and which are sketches.
Okay. Yeah. The big difference, well, at least for me, is that like the wash first, if you go to like, this is not wash first. If you go to the wash first, it tends to drip more. And I like those drips. This is colored later. I think first. This is colored
Yeah, I'm not
later.
seeing drips.
Okay, all right. Like here, let's look at the middle area. There's a whole bunch of drip lines and things that are going. A lot of the colors are, you know, outside of kind
Okay.
of the lines. Yeah. So, well, it's nice that you're not seeing a difference. It's, you
No.
know, when I'm doing it, I'm like, ooh, it's, you know, there's a really big difference.
So I have a
But
question here from Steph Lee, and she asked, what do you use for the white accents? Is it a gel pen or gouache?
a good question. Can you switch back to the camera? And I wanted to show some of these. So, I don't know if you could see it. Let me stand a little bit so maybe you could see. So I have with me this little pouch here. This is pretty much everything I sketch with. It's on a waist pouch. I would, you know, send you a link to where you could buy this and stuff. But you really can't. This is made by this mother and daughter like shop in Japan. They only took orders via phone call, or, you know, it's not an online based business kind of thing. But they make this for, if you look up online, for people that are in the hair business, you know, for cutting hairs and stuff. So these were designed for people to like stick in their, you know, scissors and combs and brushes and stuff. That's really cool. Anyway, so I have a whole bunch of things here, and let me show you things that I use on a daily basis. So here are the water brushes that I use. Probably had these about 10 plus years. You only need one, really. It's I don't do anything besides that. But regarding answering the question, besides the white, I use a Jelly Roll. Jelly Roll 08 is a Sakura one. Just, you have to be careful. I mean, the paint has to be completely dry for you to be able to use that. And I have two Posca, Uni Posca ones. I mean, these are nice. These are, yeah, they tend to clog a little bit, so we have to shake them and, you know, make sure they come out stuff. And I have a Faber-Castell one. It's a pit pen. This almost pushed just a layer of like an opaque white to it. So I use these occasionally.
So those are all white ink pens.
These are all whites. Yeah, I think whites are the ones I carry the most.
Wow.
Because I'm still trying to figure it out. Before I started out just with this one white, then I found out the Posca does a really nice job. And then like, hey, I need, you know, a glaze kind of white, and this pit pen works. And it's a trial and error. But yeah, the white color is changing a lot. But that's what I do. So,
cool. Excellent.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So did you have other sketches that we wanted to go through, Mike?
Let's see. I mean, we covered quite a lot, but actually, yeah. Let me show a few more, and then I'll show, you know, kind of my journey of, so like the Egypt sketches that I shown you. You know, I did turn it into a book, and you know, it's no longer on sale right now. But it's for some recent ones. I went to Sri Lanka. A good friend of mine lives there, and he told me about the country. And you know, my wife and I, we just fell in love with, you know, how he explained it, and we just had to go check it out. And so these were done, you know, of course, all on location. Extremely hot place. You know, a lot of challenges. You know, it's like, you know, when I'm sketching certain locations, you know, I have to go in. I have to take off my shoes, of course, but take off my hat, and I'm sweating like crazy. And yeah, it's but so, you know, what's nice is that so sketches like these were really fun to do. And then, you know, I worked on creating various versions of a sketchbook series, kind of where I turned it into a travel book of you know, the sketches. And here's a little map of, you know, where I went to, and these were the sketches that you just saw on the inside of the sketchbook that turned into a little book.
That's
So
cool. Mike, how many of those
yeah.
travel sketching books have you done now? I think I saw about 6 or so.
Yes, yes. I believe about six. Some of them they're discontinued, but some of them are still on sale. If you're interested, it's on the Amazon site. I have a book on Puerto Rico, um, Old San Juan, beautiful, beautiful place. Machu Picchu in Peru. Um, Here's one called the Freedom Trail. This is in Boston, and then the one from Sri Lanka. Yeah, they're all about 80 pages or so, 78 pages, I believe. And
Cool. So
yeah,
I'd like it if we could talk about Sketch Now and Think Later. But before that,
sure.
you could just briefly talk a bit about your hotel sketches, because that's really different.
Okay,
I've never heard of
sure,
anyone else doing.
sure. Hotel sketches. So, so this started out as, I don't even know if I could call it urban sketching, but if you call urban sketching, sketching on location from direct observation, then hotel sketches is urban sketching. It's just very, very different. And that I don't have it with me right now here,
Here, I
but
can.
I carry around a measuring tool. So like,
I can. I have the
what do you
image
have?
of that of your book.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if I can find that.
Oh, okay. So just a book cover.
Yeah, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
So this is your
Yeah.
book cover.
So that's correct. Yeah, Hotel Sketch Mike Sketch. So Sketch Mike Sketch was one of the first series that I published, and I went on to creating a hotel version and one from Egypt. But the hotel one is so that captures probably one of the first 70 or so hotels I travel around the world. Let me show you some of them here. I have them in a binder. These are um, what I do.
So are you actually measuring the room
See,
to bring measuring?
so that's correct. That's correct. Yeah, everything is measured to proportion. These are
Wow.
scale drawings. They're about 1:50 scale, and it depends on the complexity of the room. I might do a bird's eye view perspective, or I might just do a flat planogram, depending on how much time I have or how complex it is, and um, and after that, I would fill in the details of what is just fascinating. Here's a room in New York City called Citizen M, a fascinating hotel, tiny, tiny hotel room. I mean, the width of the hotel is the width of the bed,
Wow.
but you don't feel that it's really, really small because the attention to detail is just fascinating. These micro hotels are starting to get popular in the U.S. They're getting smaller, but they're more comfortable too. And
Really?
so, yeah, these are drawn over the years. Here's Manchester. I think, yeah, I had Manchester somewhere here. And yeah, inside in. This is from the Urban Sketchers Symposium in Manchester.
And so how did
Um,
you get started making,
but yeah,
like
I
what
did.
motivated you to do this?
So as a designer, so industrial designers, we tend to work on things that tend to be smaller than architects, but understanding scale and people is very important because people use the products that are designed. And so understanding the room environment, the products that are placed in it, how people use it, so the scale of things and why they're there and what adds to the joy or takes away from the joy, or especially in hotel rooms, what adds to the security and comfort, what makes you feel like you could trust sleeping in that room there for overnight, and why people tend to pay a whole lot more for one hotel than another. All of those things are captured in a room, actually, as well as the culture there. Some cultures have certain things that are very, very different than other cultures. And I mean, that's kind of why I started sketching it. It's
Wow, you're
just
like
to
a
understand
hotel
that.
expert.
Yeah, it's yeah, if you want to know about hotels around the world and how many switches are in each room and what beverages are in the refrigerator, and yeah, I could answer that for you.
Wow.
uh,
Somebody is asking, where do you have your books made?
oh, okay. So all of the books I have, aside from the Sketch Now Think Later, this one is a it's actually the only book I have published by a publisher. It's called Corey Books. Cordo Creates. So, but aside from that, all of these other ones that I just shown, these are actually all created on a place called Create Space. I believe
Oh yeah.
that's still the name. But it's an Amazon owned company. Amazon owns them, and you know, compared to companies like Blurb, I'm sure you may have heard of Blurb or some other companies where it's a lot easier to publish. You know, I mean, they may have changed. I haven't published with them for about a year or so, but it's you know, it's not the easiest to be able to create a book there. But you know, I'm happy with the quality and the price and the fact that they could just sell it on Amazon because it's an Amazon owned company. So
Yeah.
that's
And
why.
so all of your books are available on Amazon.
That's correct.
Yeah. So if
Yeah.
anyone is interested, they should go to Amazon.com and look up Mike Daikubara, and you'll
Yes.
see the list there. So getting to Sketch Now and Think Later, how did you come up with that idea for that book?
Yeah.
How did that
So
come about?
you know, well, so it kind of revolved around and a lot of things. They all connect together, but I believe the first one ties back into in the Manchester Urban Sketchers. I had submitted in a proposal to teach a workshop, and it was based around, well, Sketch Now, Think Later. So it was actually a workshop, and I created a mini booklet for the workshop, and taught this concept of drawing with limited tools, limited technique, and limited time. It is about techniques and all of that, but in essence, it really is more about the philosophy and the principles of sketching and the mindset. So I wasn't teaching like you go from A to B and you do this and that. It really wasn't that. It was like, you know, the beauty of sketching on location and, you know, what you could do in the limited time you have and make the best out of it.
And
So this,
how long does it typically take you to do a sketch?
it would depend. So like the food sketches where I finish later on, some of those line art drawings, they might be like 3 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, and you know, so some of them, you know, especially if they're hot food that I need to eat quickly, or if it's a food I'm sharing with my wife and she's hungry, you know, that's, you know, no, really, it's
Nobody
you
eats
know,
until the
yeah,
sketch is done.
yeah, exactly, which is like complete torture, right? When you're hungry, it's like, yes, you got to watch me like draw the food that you want to eat. It's like, so speed has a lot to do with it, and that. So this workshop, uh, so Gabby introduced me to the publisher of Urban Sketchers. Who, you know, he thought they might be interested in it, and I started talking with the publisher, and so that turned into you know, expanded into the book. And I'm just grateful for this opportunity to do
Yeah.
that.
So
So
I think when you're sketching really fast like that, that must impact the way you are sketching in terms of the looseness of your style, because, and you are your style is very loose. And so I'm just thinking, you know, you can't really have that tight grip on the pen and that really precise lines and worry about all of that if you're under
yeah,
such a big time limit.
that's a very good point. So I have a hard time using a ballpoint pen because ballpoint pens require strength or a little bit of strength to push down.
Yeah.
My preference is a fountain pen. Fountain pen, you could just drop the pen tip on the paper, just pull it with its own weight and be able to get a line. And
Yeah.
that's pretty much the pressure I use at most. Very, very loose. Yeah, almost like minimal to no pressure put down into it.
So when you're teaching a workshop, how is your workshop different from other people's workshops? It has to do with
Well, so,
more
mhm.
philosophy than technique.
Yeah, it is a lot of that too. But I don't want to turn it into just like, hey, here's a philosophy class I'm about to teach. No, we jump right into it. We really do, and that's where, you know, I do a little bit of demonstration depending on what we're about to draw. So for the workshop, you know, I do choose a subject, so at least we're not, you know, trying to figure out what to draw.
Yeah.
So there's a subject and there's a certain theme within that subject. Out in Porto, we drew the bridge and the river, and there's a kind of landscape in the back. So we said, let's draw that, and let's draw that in 20 minutes, and let's see how much you could get done. And for people that have never done it, it's just mind-boggling, you know, especially people that want to draw in every single house, or you know, the details, right? You're teaching them and say, no, don't do that. You know, it's like let's pull back and try to capture the bigger aspect and just focus on those small aspects area that have the most meaning, and let's give it attention to those areas.
Right. Are there any other sketches that you want to show us, Mike, either in your sketchbook or on the share screen?
Um, yeah, maybe the share screen. I don't think we went through all of the other more recent ones.
Okay.
And so because, well, you could just keep on flipping through those books. And yeah, some of these, yeah, let's stop, like go back to the green. So some of these are done in recent times, these past 2 weeks or so, where, we have limited mobility, or, we should stay indoors. The only time I get to go outside is if I go to the supermarket, or, nearby Starbucks for a drive through and coming back. But there's some construction sites where they have these machines that were parked. So I was able to park and get a sketch. Um, and it was like, so this takes about an hour or so to do. This is done with the watercolor first. So I'm waiting for the watercolor to dry and putting on the layers on it. But it's
Wow.
just, I don't know if it's, other people feel it too, but, at times like this, when, I'm indoors all day, and, you know, something strange starts happening with the brain, where it's like, I just, and doing one drawing, actually, for me, it relieves it. I feel a little more alive, and just grateful that, yeah, that I could actually sit in my car outside, and feel the sun, and do a sketch. And
But I
so
think you're starting to talk a little bit about, why sketch and why sketch at times like these. And, if
mhm.
you, how would you encourage people who are home right now with,
Yeah, well, so sketching, I believe it's one of those few things or activities where, you're focusing on the now, or you kind of need to. If you're start you know It's hard to think about the past or the future, when you have a subject in front of you, and if you have time limitations, you have to do that. You're like, all right, I gotta draw this, kind of thing. And there's beauty in anything. This is a very old truck that's parked in front of this shop. And no one comes near it's like away from the entrance. And it's just a prop that's rusted. And but the details are just fascinating, and looking at the color reflections, and it's the beauty of the sky. And so it's those details that all adds up, which
yeah.
makes it, yeah, really fun. So those were some of the recent ones
So,
that I wanted
I
to
mean,
share.
are you sketching inside now, or are you trying to still go outside as much as you can?
I try to go outside, but I'm in my car. So even if there's nobody outside in miles, I don't know. It's this paranoia thing. It's almost hard to leave the car, and
Yeah.
it's probably a good thing for many people. If everybody did that, I think
Yeah.
we might be in a
Yeah.
good place.
Cool. So Mike's books are available at Amazon.com. Look up Mike Daikubara. And also, if you're home and you're looking for something to do, please consider taking an online workshop. We have 2 workshops that are available at Studio 56. One is taught by Oliver Holler, and it's called Design on the Fly. And the other one is taught by Ian Finelli, and it's called Layers of Looking. And you'll find both those online workshops at www.studio56boutique.com. And thanks everyone for coming. I just want to go back to Mike if I can for a second. Mike, do you have any
Hmm.
closing words that you want to say to anyone?
Yeah, well, I'd like to thank everyone who made it today. It's too bad we couldn't do the chat thingy, but I feel very connected. And it's nice to feel connected at times like this. Um, and yeah, I do believe from the bottom of my heart that, sketching does bring a lot of us, closer together. And bringing that in the daily life is, for me, it brings me a lot of joy. I hope it does for you too. And it doesn't have to be a lot of time, but just keep on doing it. And
Yeah. Thank
it
you.
keeps on giving back. Hmm.
Thanks everyone for tuning in, and take care of yourselves and your family and your neighbors. And we care about you, and we think that you're important, and we love you, and we want you to be well. Keep making your art, and don't worry, better days are on the horizon. All right. Thanks
Right.
everyone.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
everyone. Thank you,
Thanks.
Brenda.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.